Objectively, I knew it had to happen one day, and yet it felt like it would never come. It's honestly quite hard to explain just how rough the current period in Welsh rugby is to an outsider. 18 defeats in a row is almost unfathomable. It's the same number of losses South Africa have suffered in total under Rassie Erasmus over 7 years. The All Blacks lost that number over 13 years between 2004 and 2017. Wales reached the midway point of the World Cup cycle, having not yet won a game since 2023. If they'd lost on Saturday, it would have been 2 straight years without one victory, and that's without getting into how hopeless everything else in Welsh rugby felt, as union incompetence saw the entire system that produced 5 Six Nations titles in 15 years cave in on itself. The women's team, the regions, the age grade sides, all underperforming, as many fans found this tour little more than a distraction from the constant drama and existential threats lingering over the sport in Wales. The union on the brink of committing competitive suicide and deleting half their professional teams, structures, academy pathways, whilst making countless errors and scandals coming out all the time. Nothing in Welsh rugby currently works. And yet, for 80 minutes, this Saturday gone, a spirited side of 23 players and a small group of inexperienced coaches made all of that irrelevant, as they reset the national mood and created, honestly, genuinely, one of my personal favourite days as a rugby fan ever. The day the curse was lifted. The day, after 2 full years, Wales finally won a rugby match. So let's look squarely at that rugby. How did Wales finally win and lift that silverback gorilla off their back? There was honestly something sort of perfect about the alchemy of how this game was won. It felt, if you'll forgive me for being romantic, and frankly I think I've earned it, the only things I've had to be romantic about over the last 2 years were late winners over Ulster, like Welsh rugby captured in 80 vital minutes. One try through beautiful flowing rugby like the 70s reincarnated. One try from sheer effort, never giving up and scrapping for everything, the spirit that kept Wales going as a top tier nation for over 100 years. One try from a magic winger, as ever keeping Wales in the game that seemed to be slipping away, like Shane, Ken, Gerard, George, JJ, Ian, Josh. One penalty through brilliant open side play, the position that's given Wales a steady stream of world-class talent these last few decades, and one dramatic winning try from a young fly half, the shirt that's always meant so much to Wales, giving back on its most desperate day. Perhaps the highlight of all of these scores was that beautiful break by Josh Adams, ultimately finished by Kieran Hardy. This is a practice-rehearsed move that Adams then riffs on like rugby jazz, and it's an excellent one. It's a brilliant 11 play, just meaning that there's one phase in one direction, then another in the other direction, back the way it came. 1, and then 1, 11, put them together. 11 plays are something that caretaker coach Matt Sherritt, a man whose tears of relief from full-time felt more because he doesn't have to coach Wales anymore than because he won, is extremely fond of and has characterised a lot of this Welsh team's most successful moments, or more to the point, closest near misses. Yet this one very much comes off. Wales call here a shortened 4-man line-out. The idea here isn't to get more of their own bodies out into the main field into attack, but rather to have fewer Japanese shirts in this area because that's where they're planning to attack second phase, hoping instead that those red and white shirts would be in the middle of the pitch. Wales play it quick, and the setup outside Edwards is so simple it could write Clive Woodward's column. Whilst go forward would be lovely, Dan Edwards' real goal here is to hit the seam between forwards and backs, here sending Wainwright directly between Lee Sin-sung and Michael Leach, the last forward out before it's all backs. As such, with quick ball available, it splits the Japanese defence in two. All the backs are on this side of the ruck, and this side entirely forwards until he gets to the very wing. The moment the line-out is over, the forwards Paxters previously involved jog into shape here, with Dewi Lake filling in as an edge forward, probably putting middle finger up to Andy Fowler as he does so. Hardy throws a brilliant skip pass to Alex Mann, the widest forward out. Alex Otoko, as you should probably call him this tour, is able to fix Kamamori. Dern's the only Japanese forward not taken out the game by Hardy's pass, but don't worry, Dan Eds is on the case. Him and Murray swing around from the blind side last second into this forward pod's boot. Edwards can fix Derns in time and times the pass beautifully, Lake running a belting line to buy Murray a second on the ball, allowing him to fix Saito, covering in from the back as Murray hits Adams, who has also concealed himself on the far side of the pitch, initially part of this shape outside Edwards, then taking position so late that Japan can't pay him any heed until he already has the ball. Japan were well marked up for the initial situation, 4 forwards slowly walking to position, but find themselves instead now facing Wales' 3 quickest players going at pace. With Saito fixed, Adams only has backtracking forwards in front of him, and his swerve opens up the entire field. Hardy is a good scrum half, so therefore is running the classic cheat line, taking the pass and going over for the try. It's a brilliant, intricate move designed to take Japan's backs out the game so they can create mismatches against their forwards, an idea that's been core to Welsh rugby since the late 1800s, back when that kind of thing was novel, and seeing a score in this style help flick the light switch in Cymru's darkest hour is kind of special. Josh Adams was brilliant before being placed at half-time, almost inarguably his best game for Wales in 4 years, but I think the most amazing part of this performance was the opposite to last week. In Test 1, the Welsh players who really stood up to get them into that commanding 18-7 position were Adams, Faletau, Lake, Smith, the established steady campaigns who've done it in the past, who've been there countless times. This week instead, so many of the standouts were kids with less than 10 caps. The worst part of the losing run was always the fact you could see how much effort the players were putting in week after week, but to no resolve or reprieve. Josh McLeod had a brilliant season for the Scarlets, one of the form players on Wales, but last week looked pretty slow and ineffective when granted the step up to Test level. This Saturday, he proved all of us who ever doubted him titanic levels of wrong, winning 4 turnovers in a monumental, heroic performance that almost reminded me of Josh Navidi, finally making the jump to internationals right as he stared down 30. With this perhaps being my favourite moment, a try-saver on Michael Leach sprinting full stretch to get there. Fellow flanker Alex Mann has somehow on this tour also transformed himself from innocent sweet young boy plucked out to play for Wales into the proto-bastard. And Aberdare Peter O'Mahony smashing everything on a desperate wind-up. Dern's delivery here is pretty poor from the line-out, but sniffing blood, Mann harries him so hard, Saito hurries the pass in raw fear, and Lee panic passes just sending it blindly. Japan's timing entirely thrown off, allowing Wales to control the gain line. Lake gets over the ball to slow it down, but whilst it's all going on, Mann here absolutely melts Saito, then ruffles his hair in the turf, leaving the scrum off late to get there, and the Welsh line perfectly set against a panicking, harried, and most importantly, slow Japanese attack. The 2 second rows make the tackle, and watch how Teddy Williams dips a shoulder into the clear out to slow it down, meaning they initiate on him instead of cleaning the ball, allowing McLeod to get over the ball and win the penalty. Teddy Williams incidentally was excellent, so performance he couldn't have given a year ago. Unable to do his trademark flashy Nakarawa bullshit, he said fronted up like a proper Test lock, the sort of dynamic yet capable player Wales have been missing since Will Rowlands was replaced by an AI version of himself after the World Cup. Tom Rogers was also great, able to control the air, then faultless when moved into the centre, while Keelan Giles, finally earning his first Welsh cap after 9 years of regular wider squad selections, was superb. Despite coming off the bench, he finished the game with the most defenders beaten of anyone on the field, defensively and positionally also excellent. Captain Dewi Lake, however, somehow outworked them all. The hooker was everywhere. Look at this burst of sheer determination to get across and close off winger Ishida, one of the fastest players in Japan. It was how he played all day, and even when subbed off, he was no less hungry, desperate, or emotional. His tears in response to the decisive score surely set to be the enduring image of the day. Here, in the lead up to Kieran Hardy's first try, Wales drag their backs in, and it prompts Japan to throw everything in, everyone into this maul. It slowly creeps sideways until Masiki, the last forward out, commits. At this point, Lake looks up and sees just Lee, the number 10 in front of him, and charges directly. It's a great tackle, but 2 other backs come in to help out, and Hardy has been doing this all season. With Leach so fixated on covering Edwards and Murray out wide, he overworks, and Hardy can smartly target Lee himself getting off the ground, knowing not only is he just freshly up to his feet, but also offside, so if he makes the tackle, it's probably a yellow card, so skims around him, and aged 106, Leach can only react so fast. Hardy is over for an incredibly well taken try. This was the truly pleasing thing, whereas identifying opportunities and key moments in the game. The stench of club team dropped into Test rugby that permeates off the Sherratt era is still pretty ripe, but the increased accuracy they brought suggested if Wales can find a coach capable of getting some stronger structures in place, they might be okay. A lot of this aided by the inclusion of some killer instinct in the 10 shirt, in the form of the frightfully dewy Dan Edwards. Where Sam Costello is an incredible, remarkable, raw talent, with Edwards, Wales have instead unearthed a kid to complement him who has rather min-maxed Test match mindset. Saturday was a coming of age for him. Edwards delivering a composure in the 10 shirt we haven't seen since the last Dan from Swansea. Edwards' performance for me is kind of summed up by this 50-22 attempt from basically his own 22-metre line. He's aiming for the 5-metre in the Japanese half. It's honestly up there with the most audacious kicks I've ever seen in Test rugby, and could have been potentially match-winning if it came off, but when the ball bounces the away and he said cost this team enormous territory, he just gives a little grimace and then a grin, and then the resulting scrum is right out the blocks, looking to put pressure on Japan, wanting to make a tackle, working harder than anybody else, desperate to do so. Japan knocked it on a phase or so later, Wales won a penalty from the scrum. Edwards gets decent distance on the kick, then calls that 2-phase play that creates the try moments later with him giving a glorious touch. Very few young 10s would attempt such an insane kick in the first place, but if they did that on their first start, an error like this could cause them to go into their shell and lose their grip on the game. But that isn't who Dan Edwards is. So much of it is the small things, the plays he calls, decisions he makes in micro moments. This is a play Wales have run repeatedly under Sherratt it, setting up a midfield platform to box kick from. Yet when Rogers gets so far over the game line, he calls for Hardy to keep playing, making more meterage. Contrast that to last week when Wales just let the play roll on, kicking it even when they shortened Japan's line enormously, had a real chance to play. Even the lead up to Dylan Riley's lovely, really well taken interception try was great identification of space from Edwards. He waits here behind the forward pod to shorten the line, then stretches onto the outside to reload into a shape, thinking in advance, seeing this coming a phase out. If he takes this here, he can likely engage Ishida and put Murray away down the wing. And defensively, Dan Eds might not be the most dominant tackle in the world, but his attitude more than makes up for it. The kid loves tackling and replaces what he lacks in physicality with raw line speed. Twice he assists McLeod on turnovers. Here he wraps the ball up immediately, unable to strip it, but Nakano is unable to present on his own terms, giving the flanker a clear target. He then proceeds to smash the resulting penalty into the Japanese 22, creating a position from which he scores his eventual winning try. Ruben Morgan-Williams, his halfback partner at club level, made a real impact off the bench, upping the tempo on carry after carry as Wales played more off 9 than previously in the game. Japan unprepared and struggling with the gain line. They get up to within 5 metres out of the line, and then this carry from James Ratty is brilliant. Morgan-Williams hitting the outside runner so he can slide onto Dearns' weaker shoulder and make both an extra yard and engage an extra defender critically. With Lee now on the deck and unable to bounce out, no Japanese players can slide into position, forcing Riley to come in and mark Plumtree and winger Ishida in narrow. A remarkably, truly remarkable batshit pass by Plumtree fully fixes Riley and allows Rogers to weigh it up. Edwards hitting the line and going over for the score that won Wales a game of rugby for the first time in almost 2 years. Japan did manage to get themselves back into the game repeatedly, first through this immediate impact try from Shuhei Takeuchi. It's a pretty simple move, but it's played with Japan's trademark pace. They form a proper maul, not even a dummy one, but Leach breaks off immediately and, being their key guy, successfully engages McLeod, allowing Nakano to target Dan Edwards alone. Thomas and the Tiny 10 get him to ground, but watch Leach here. He pins Edwards on the ground, knee on his head, with Thomas also kind of pinning Edwards' legs in. Advantage now played. Japan's follow-up is simple but smart. They hit Takeuchi on the outside line, Man having to dive at his ankles, but watch Makisi's clear out here. Instead of securing the ball, he takes a long route round so he can send Griffin away at an angle. Williams thinks he's secure on this edge, but Makisi's cleared Griffin so far beyond the ball against the grain, using the prop to block the Welsh fold, that it just opens a path for Takeuchi to release, regather, and dive over, scoring the try. Japan last year had a lot of good ideas but were missing the detail. From the 2 games so far this year, it feels that the focus has been primarily on that detail. Their breakdown work is kind of incredible at times, and whilst the addiction to one-man cleans to up the tempo presented Cymru some turnover opportunities, their accuracy in areas such as this was brilliant. This team feels like a work in progress, 2 years away from being ready, which would be typical Eddie Jones. There's a World Cup in 2 years, but there are big active strides being taken forward all the time, and it's most evident how smart they now are in the contact area and switched on they are when they get a chance to counterattack. And yet, despite the enormous stakes, there was a strange calm to Wales. I think Eddie Jones's bold tactical decision to replace the front row in the first half both worked and backfired on Japan. Yes, it granted them that try, got them back in the game, but halftime coming so soon afterwards gave Wales time to regroup and work out a way through it, to readjust, both tactically and momentum-wise. Something they managed extremely well on their way to creating an all-time historic momentous day for themselves and supporters alike. Anything good that now happens over the next decade of Welsh rugby may just have been built on the shoulders of this very game. The enemy in Welsh rugby right now is apathy. The absence of days like this for 2 straight years, combined with regional teams unable to seriously compete as the WU spent 30% less of its very similar annual budget on professional rugby than Ireland does, left many fans switching off, ignoring their alarm clocks and sleeping through the 6:50am kickoff. And yet, these players delivered, with a level of pressure on them, honestly, possibly never seen previously in professional rugby. It's over 100 years since a top flight team in the sport last lost so many games in a row, and that's without considering the other pressures. The Daily Mail's Alex Bywater this week published a piece touching on how the current speculation around cutting regions has affected players personally. The threat of no longer having a job, an employer, or a club lingering over them, affecting livelihoods and performance. Multiple players have reportedly been denied mortgages because Welsh rugby in 2025 is too unstable a business. The enemy is apathy, and to cut 2 regional teams is to risk alienating half of the most hardcore fans. I can only speak for myself, an Osprey supporter, but if my club was to suddenly be cut, I wouldn't switch allegiances. The W would have lost me as a fan. This is the sentiment I find everywhere from everyone I speak to, and frankly, if covering rugby wasn't my full-time job, I think there's a pretty good chance I'd take at least a season out from watching the game entirely as a result. But it's also much bigger than that, deeper than that. Cutting 2 teams also means cutting 2 academies, on top of the national academy structure the W already dismantled in the 2010s. Even if the best players still get scouted and dug out just the same, there is no way an identical amount of time is put into them from both a coaching and playing point of view. Look at the key players in this very game against Japan. If Dan Edwards comes through a hypothetical merged West Wales region instead of the Ospreys, he would have been stuck in a logjam with Sam Costello, Owen Williams, Ewan Lloyd, and for a period, Gareth Hanscom, all players who've worn the red number 10 jersey in the last 3 years. There's no way on Alan Wynn's green earth that he'd be going into this game with 2,000 plus minutes of pro rugby under his belt, and hence able to manage the game as he did. And that's if he emerges from the pathway at all. A few years ago, the Scots happily let go of academy prospect Jack Morgan, Wales's one and only 2025 British and Irish Lion, because they rated McLeod and uncapped Dan Davis as better prospects. Now imagine if they also had Justin Tipuric and Dan Lydiate competing for the spots in the same back row, denying them any game time at all until the two retired this season. If there's no Ospreys to pick him up as a youngster and develop him, Jack Morgan, right now, is a mechanical engineer. Saturday's result was vital, not just because it lifted the cloud, but because it also shone a spotlight on how much talent the region's been producing over the last few years and what they can do when finally given the structures and mental element to get it right. 21 of the 23 players on Saturday were products of the regional system, 20 of them still at one such club. There's mountains more just waiting to be paired with a coach who can make the most of them if the W will ever make that announcement. The enemy in Welsh rugby right now is apathy. But that incredible core of players gave us a day it was impossible to be unemotional about. Dewi Lake's face as Edwards scored that winning try is destined to become an all-time Welsh rugby moment as a borderline world-class player who's become the reluctant face the darkest chapter in Welsh rugby history saw the sun for the first time in 2 years. A moment, objectively, he knew must happen, yet probably felt would never come. Thank you for watching that. I hope you enjoyed it. There is so much else going up around the channel. We're going to have a full massive preview of the Lions' first test tomorrow. We've got a look at the second team over on the second channel, More Squid Rugby. Please have a look at it. We had a look at Razzie's kind of innovations in that Springboks Italy game. We're going to look at all sorts. Scotland, Fiji we've got on the way. Ireland, Portugal. We're going to look at as many as possible. And we'll see you very soon. For more rugby, I'm led to believe.
7 years with the Dragons, much loved at Rodney Parade. He's on. Ruben Morgan-Williams is away, chips over the top for himself. Ruben Morgan-Williams collects and offloads, and Edwards is in. And the Ospreys slide in.